All right, what's up, everyone? We're here with Barry Schwartz. He is the, I think, owner of SE Roundtable. Is that true, or are you the main contributor?
So yeah, Search Engine Roundtable is my personal search engine blog, I guess. You want to call
Gotcha.
it that.
So Barry shares a lot of really good stuff around updates on Google and sort of what's going on. He also has a fantastic YouTube channel that goes over this stuff, which I will be leaving a link to his YouTube channel in the description of this video, which I really encourage you guys to check out. I've been watching his stuff for quite a while, and there's always new stuff I'm learning from him. Barry, do you want to fill in any of the blanks on maybe some of the stuff I didn't mention?
Sure, about my bio, yeah, sure. I mean, first and foremost, I'm the CEO, president of a company called Rusty Brick, a web development and mobile development shop in New York. So we do a lot of custom software and some B2B software for our customers. And my hobby really is the search engine stuff, the SEO stuff. So I started the Search Engine Roundtable probably about 13 years ago or so, almost 13 years, or almost 14 years, I forgot exactly. And I've been covering search for a long time just because it's a hobby. I love doing it. It's enjoyable, and I love covering search. And of course, I also write at Search Engine Land. I'm a news editor there. I've been writing at Search Engine Land since it started with Danny Sullivan, who recently retired from search. And that's what I pretty much do: Rusty Brick, Search Engine Roundtable, and Search Engine Land.
Hey, Barry, can I ask you a question in regards to like the software side of things? Like, is there a reason why you went into that instead of like maybe doing like SEO as a service or something?
Sure. I mean, so Rusty Brick's way older than the whole search engine roundtable. I've been doing Rusty Bricks since high school. Since I've been in high school, my brother and I started it, building software, websites, and so forth for our customers. And we always built software for customers, be it like advanced websites or taxi cab software, whatever it might be. We could build it, and that's the primary way I make money. In terms of SEO, since I write about it, since I have sources at Google and this and that, I've never felt that comfortable offering SEO services. And the truth be told, you really can't control the outcome. When people hire you for SEO, they expect you to list them for whatever keywords in certain positions. And the truth is, you don't control that. Google has algorithms that are constantly changing, as you know. And one day you could be number 2, one day you could be number 5, one day you could be penalized. And I don't feel comfortable offering a service where I can't control the outcome, and I don't feel comfortable writing about something in an unbiased way if I had clients that I'm trying to promote or certain SEO practices that I'm trying to promote.
Can I ask if like you were to go about it though, like what would be the way that you would go about maybe selling it as a service if you were to?
I guess I'm more of a technical SEO service. Like I'll build X pages for you. I'll add AMP to your site. I'd analyze your search console data. Something like has a technical output with a very finite deliverable saying you will do X, Y, and Z, and you will deliver on X, Y, and Z. So delivering on position 2 or 3 is not really 100% possible, but there's ways to do that. A lot of people do other methods for that. So
like sort of getting away from like the monthly retainer model and like maybe just doing like one-time packages where you're not like directly responsible for their rankings.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do SEO audits and so forth. So they'll provide a 20-page or 100-page audit on things they should change on their website. More of a technical SEO thing in terms of what technical things you could apply outside of link building and content writing and stuff like that.
Gotcha. Okay. So in regards to some of the new stuff you've been seeing, Barry, like what has been really standing out lately with sort of the direction on things, and what are some of like the bigger things that maybe like people would be interested in hearing about that you've been seeing?
There's lots of stuff constantly going on. So like the past week or so, there was definitely some ranking shuffles with Google. One on the 16th of September, one on the 20th of September. There are some chatter about that right now. So like in terms of right now what's going on, I would say there's a lot of webmasters. I wouldn't say a huge number, but I would definitely say a nice minority of webmasters noticing some drastic shifts in the rankings with something that Google's going on with their algorithms. So that's always happening. You always have people talking about that in terms of the rankings changing up and down and so forth. in terms of what I find pretty interesting right now is the whole controversy around, do clicks impact, rankings? People clicking, pogo sticking, going to your website, clicking back to the search results, time spent on site, all those user behavior type of metrics that Google has been denying that they don't use for search rankings for years and years, calling it noisy data or bad data to use for rankings. There have been some, not just studies, we always had studies saying there is a correlation between sites that get high click-through rates and so forth that tend to rank well, but more on some Googlers actually hinting that they may use that. And the big thing that upsets me is that I asked Google, hey, I have somebody from Google Brain Toronto, the Google Brain team in Toronto, hinting that Google uses that for rankings. That person might not know because they're not necessarily on the rankings team. Why are they saying this? Get back to me. Just confirm Google's not using click data. And Google didn't get back to me. I asked them 3 or 4 times. It's a simple answer. No, we're not using click data for rankings. It's very simple. They might use it for monitoring how well their algorithms are doing. But in terms of ranking site A higher or site B higher based on click data, Google has told us time and time again that they don't use that data. And Google has not, from a PR perspective, responded to my several emails about, do they use that data? It's simple. Just respond, I don't use it. By them not responding, it has me asking that question, what's going on? Are they now using it? Who knows? Maybe tomorrow they'll respond, but I'm sorry. But it's that kind of personally bothering me right now, that click data stuff.
Well, have they confirmed whether or not like certain user metrics are a ranking signal yet, like bounce rates or pogo sticking or anything like that?
They've confirmed in the past they do not use that for direct ranking signals, meaning if site A and site B are equivalent on every single ranking metric, but site A has a higher click-through rate from the search results to Google with less pogo sticking back, that's not going to make any difference to Google in terms of rankings. What they do say they use the click data for in terms of measuring clicks from the search results to the pages and back is to see if algorithm A that they're testing and algorithm B that they're testing to see if algorithm A or algorithm B is better as a whole. Right. But in terms of ranking specific websites higher or lower, they said time and time again they don't use that, except for this last time when I asked them.
Interesting. Okay. So where do you see all this stuff headed, Barry? I mean, is it all going towards like RankBrain in terms of like user intent, user experience sort of signals, or do you think that like forever we're going to be stuck in the like sort of almost seems like primitive era of Google needing to use links to rank websites?
So I think a couple of years ago, Google said they tried to just turn off link data to see how that impacted the search results, and it was a horrible case. They said it just made the search results so hard, really bad. It wasn't something that they want to turn off. I think Microsoft Bing just kind of hinted that they might be reducing the value of link signals in their search algorithms and for ranking purposes. So I actually asked Bing about that, Microsoft about that, and they said, actually, no, we're not. They say they are using other metrics more, like other things probably more, but they're not really reducing how they said links are very valuable, and Google has said that time and time again. Links are incredibly valuable. Of course, there's those new queries, those niche queries that don't have a lot of links to them. So a lot of pages, like new pages that come up every single day, they don't have many links to them, and Google needs to be able to rank new pages for content. And of course, there's things like query deserves freshness and different types of algorithms that they use to say, all right, in this query, for this query, maybe links should not matter as much. And it was interesting. I just asked John Mueller from Google about this not so long ago, asking him, does Google, for certain types of queries or certain types of context, use links, weigh links less than they might for another, area? And he said, for sure. He said for like local queries or for news topics, like stuff like hurricanes and stuff like that, or new articles are coming out about hurricane, Irma or whatever it might be, of course, those pages don't have many links to them today, and they have to actually say, all right, this page needs to rank higher because it's now trending in terms of people searching for it. It's a fresh query and so forth. But other things like spammy areas, I said, what about spammy areas that get a lot of link spam? Do you think Google maybe downplays the value of links in those areas? And I gave a reference to Yandex, the largest Russian search engine, saying they actually went ahead and removed link signals for very, very spammy areas, like, I don't know, pornography or pills or stuff like that. And he said he's not certain about it, but it would make sense to him that Google would use link signals, weigh them less for spammy types of queries and context. And of course, obviously, it depends on the query, it depends on the niche, and so forth. But Google's algorithms are weighed differently. The different variables in the algorithm seem to be weighed differently based on the query and the context of that search.
So do you think that like when links matter less for certain queries, do you think that other things matter more? And if so, do you have an idea on like maybe if that would be around like user metrics or signals like that?
So yeah, I mean, obviously, if links are weighed less, then something else has to be weighed more, and it really depends on the context of the query, like we just discussed. In terms of user behavior, again, I've asked Google time and time again to look at user behavior, and they've told me no, 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 no. And we discussed, this is a topic that comes up a lot, and people, a lot of SEOs and webmasters and non-SEOs believe, yeah, if I get a lot of clicks to my site, people spend a lot of time on my site, they engage with my website, that Google uses that metric from either Chrome data or Google Analytics and so forth. And Google says, no, we don't use that data for ranking because it's too easy to spam, it's too noisy, and so forth. So if you want to take Google's word for it, at least what they've said in the past for years and years, no, Google does not use behavioral data for ranking websites. But again, I'm scratching my head this past couple weeks and saying, what's going on?
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Cool. Okay, so one of the questions I have would be around like we know that like certain links are going to be more important depending on the search. Like for instance, if they're like more related to that niche than, for instance, say like if you were talking about dogs and somebody's linking to you from like a site about toothpaste, it wouldn't make really any sense, in terms of the industry. Same thing with like the different types of searches for like, say it's a local search versus like a national search for, something around gambling. So what my question is like, when you look at these link analysis tools like Ahrefs or whatever you're using, they all just say domain authority and page authority, that kind of thing, or, domain rating, page rating. Is there anything out there, or any way to start being able to check like more of like the, like, I guess relevancy? I think there is a tool for that, huh? Isn't there? It's called like Bright Local.
I think a lot of the tools actually tell you what industry or segment that link is coming from. I think Majestic shows you that. I'm not a big link person. I don't use them every day for, I don't have SEO client data that I'm using it for, but I do use it when I'm analyzing penalties and so forth.
I guess it wasn't really related actually to the niche. It was more related to like the importance of whether you would need a link for that query or not. That would be more of the question.
Right.
Like,
so
is there any way to find that out?
The competitive nature of the query doesn't require links. And
Yeah.
I think, I'm not sure yet, I think some tools definitely show how competitive a query is. And based on that, yeah, you would be able to measure, I need links for this link or not. And especially when you're comparing your competitors' links to your links. A lot of the tools compare, what website A or web page A to website B to web page B. And it shows you, that has this amount of links with, the average domain authority or page rank, whatever metrics they're using to measure those links. Just to tell you, you would need a lot of links to rank for that. I believe back in the day, I'm not sure about today, but back in the day, a lot of SEOs would be like, for you to rank for Blue Widget, I see these are the top 3 results that rank for Blue Widget, and they all have X number of links from X number of websites with a page rank score of Y or something like that, and thus you need to spend X amount of dollars buying and paying for links and so forth to achieve that goal, and it will take you X amount of months, X amount of dollars over X amount of months, and so forth. I'm not sure how often that's used these days because Google doesn't really share the PageRank score, but now that Google doesn't share PageRank, people are going to alternatives like domain authority from Moz and other alternatives from other tools.
Right. Okay. So personally, Barry, what are you spending your time working on, like in terms of SEO? Like, of course, you're trying to get tons of traffic to SE Roundtable, and then I'm sure you're probably doing some SEO as well for your software company, or not software company, but selling, what is it, software as a service? No. Selling.
We have some software as a service, and
okay.
Also, obviously custom development. But no, I honestly would be surprised. No, even my search site, I don't even think necessarily about SEO. Of course, I know SEO very well, so the way I write content tends to be the way searchers would look for that content. So when I'm thinking about, like, one of the products we sell is a synagogue management platform. And when I write the pages of the content on that website and I explain the features, I'm thinking just first and foremost, how will somebody looking for that solution or that feature search for it in Google or Bing? And that's the way I think when I write. And that's often one of the biggest stumbling blocks when it comes to SEO, is making sure you are optimizing or creating a page that is somewhat optimized, if you want to call it optimized, or somewhat targeted towards what the searchers are looking for when they're trying to find your product. A lot of people, they optimize their pages, especially when they're very close to the product itself or close to the service themselves. They think about the technical term of that software or of that service, and they're not really thinking about how consumers will search for that. A good example would be like a doctor who specializes in a certain type of practice might, optimize their pages for the clinical terms, whereas a patient might say, I have a rash on my arm and it has these bumps on it, and they're not really optimizing for what the patient might search for. They seem to be optimizing more for the technical clinical term that it is, and most patients don't know that information. Again, you got to think about how your searchers will find you, and I tend to write like that, not just on the search engine roundtable, which is I'm trying to write content that people are searching for, but also from when I build product pages for my software as a service or my own company website.
So this sort of seems like abstract thinking, like, okay, well, if they're looking for this, then, they're probably also trying to say this. And then I'm sure Google's probably semantically, able to pick up that you're also trying to rank for that other main keyword by, what people are actually looking for around that subject. What are some of the ways that you actually find this information? Is there like a specific way, or you just do some digging and then end up figuring it out?
I personally, again, I don't have any scientific method. I do think listening to your customers is the most important thing. Looking, when you speak to your customers, see how they ask you questions, write them down, look at your own internal search results. So if somebody's on your website and is doing searches on your website itself, that's a great way to see what people are looking for when they're on your website, and collecting that data and optimizing pages around those keywords could be very valuable. Or maybe you just have more people on your website. So really it's about listening to what your customers are saying, prospects are saying, and making sure you have pages that cover those terms on your website.
Nice. Okay. So you talk a lot about the updates on Google and sort of what's going on, but where do you personally learn from in terms of like, techniques, or who would you recommend to like learn from in terms of like, like actually optimizing pages, or maybe more the technical side of SEO?
Right. There's tons of great resources out there. It really depends on your level. So obviously, if you have a major corporate site and you have no title tags on those pages and you have 100,000 pages on that corporate site, it's pretty easy. Just add title tags. If you are an international site and you need to kind of optimize your pages so that your different language pages are falling into the right Google service, so you want to use hreflang, you want to make sure to mark up your pages there. If you are selling product, or you have reviews on your website, or different things, you want to mark up your content with structured data so that Google could apply the rich cards and rich schema. And obviously, if you are looking to get into this whole new realm of voice search, you want to make sure that you have what are called feature snippets, because obviously people are searching more and more on mobile, and those people searching more and more on mobile are also searching more over voice search. And voice search is really the future of where search is going. And the only way today to get into voice search results really is to be in those featured snippets, which is what other people call position 0.
So I actually get a lot of questions around this, Barry, is, like, how do you optimize for that?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's a lot of technical guidelines around that. I actually just gave a presentation on it last week, I believe, or a week before that at Brandify. They had some type of summit there, and I gave a presentation on that. I'll bring up my slides quickly, but basically, there's Google advice, and there's also advice from what's it called, from actual SEOs. And the advice from Google is basically it's organic. You cannot control those search results. You can't control ranking number 1 in feature snippets. Of course, that's the Google line. But when you do answer questions, when you do write content, you want to make sure you're writing content that answers questions, because these are really somewhat long-tail keywords. These are voice searches. People are having conversations with search, asking specific questions using voice search, which is more long-tail, more conversational. And people are obviously saying you have to make sure your content's written in a way that answers questions. You got to make sure to be concise with your answers. Make sure they're short and to the point. They're saying, the optimal spot is 40 to 50 words. Make sure to use H1 and H2 tags. They're also saying that both lists and paragraphs work to show up in those feature snippet areas. The weird thing is that they often change, meaning like if you do a search for something that comes up with a feature snippet today, often, tomorrow or the next week, a different website will be featured in that position. In addition, what you see on mobile sometimes differs from what you see on desktop. And that might have to do with Google somewhat pushing AMP content more, accelerated mobile pages more on mobile over desktop. There are a lot of cool tools that actually let you measure how many feature snippets you have and so forth, such as SEMrush and other tools. So you can definitely use that to see how many feature snippets you're showing for in Google and try to inflate that number. I know that's been a very big priority for a lot of SEOs to make sure their clients show up more often for feature snippets, because again, that's where the future of search is, at least today. And Google says they use artificial intelligence, AI, probably some level of rank brain for the query understanding in order to know when they should actually go ahead and show these feature snippets and so forth. So those are some just quick tips off the top of my head in terms of ranking for feature snippets.
Okay, awesome. I actually interviewed, I don't know if you met him, but I think his name is Michael from Brandify, so it's a small world. If you could go back a year ago, Barry, what would you maybe change your focus on if you could, or would you do everything the same?
So again, I don't do much for SEO. So a year ago, it's really more of the same. The feature snippets were important then. They're obviously more important now. Google's selling these Google Home devices. You have Android Auto in cars. You have Google Voice Search just skyrocketing. You have Alexa and the Amazon devices. Apple coming out with their HomePod soon. So obviously, looking at voice search is always going to be important. And of course, the mobile first index, which is going to probably launch either at the end of this year or at the beginning of next year at some point. And obviously, some people have been pushing off making a mobile-friendly website. A lot of people who did make a mobile-friendly website initially made it with an M.dot domain or made it with a separate mobile version of their website. And I've been since we've been having these debates about mobile, how you should build your mobile website, responsive versus separate website versus dynamic serving, I've always been on the side of responsive. And now even more than ever, having a responsive site, especially for the mobile first index, is very, very important. I built the Search Engine Roundtable as a dynamic serving site. So I do have, my queue to make it responsive, and I haven't done it yet. But that's probably something I would have done years ago as opposed to making it dynamic serving. Obviously, Rusty Brick and my other products are all responsive. But probably one of the mistakes I made early on was to make Search Engine Roundtable, just because it was easier at that point, a dynamic served content in mobile. But with the mobile first index coming out really soon, and making sure to ensure that your content on your desktop and mobile sites are equivalent, because that's going to be probably one of the more important factors when it comes to this thing rolling out. Responsive really helps a lot with that. It's not foolproof, but it definitely helps you make sure that your content is more equivalent if you had a responsive website.
Nice. So is there anything else that you would recommend in terms of like getting ready for the mobile first index, maybe like getting AMP going, or like, I don't know, besides the responsive or the, switching over from an M.dot site?
Yeah, so you don't necessarily have to do a switch over, but if you are planning on going responsive, you should definitely do it well before Google launches this mobile first index. It's something that Google even themselves has been pushing recently. Google said, if you don't have a mobile website, it's fine. Google will index your desktop site just like they do right now. If you don't have a mobile site, they'll still index your desktop site. But just the main thing that people should realize is that Google's going to be indexing your website as they see it on a mobile browser, so a smartphone. So look at your website on a smartphone, iPhone, Android phone. Look at it and make sure it has the content and the links and the navigation and the site structure that you would see in the title tags and the structure markup, all that type of stuff that you would see specifically on your desktop site. You want to make sure there's as equivalent as possible between your desktop and mobile site. So those are probably the most important things. Google said they are going to roll it out slowly in batches, so they're probably going to take a chunk of sites that they know are ready for mobile first by saying, all right, these sites are mobile friendly, the pages are mostly equivalent, and they probably will go ahead and roll those out first to see what type of impact they have, and then start pushing other sites to become more mobile friendly over in the future. So there's not really much you have to do outside of just really compare your mobile site to your desktop site and making sure they look as equivalent as possible. Speed, AMP is probably not, you don't have to probably worry about AMP. You don't have to go AMP to do this right. Again, Google themselves has to say go responsive. Of course, they want you to have AMP pages, but I don't even think Google's going to crawl the AMP version for the mobile first index unless you make that AMP page your canonical version, which most people don't do. It doesn't really make sense to do that.
All right, good tips, man. Here's a good question. What's the craziest thing you've heard John Mueller or Gary Illyes say?
The craziest thing I heard John Mueller say? Gary? Yeah, I don't know. There's so many things. Like, all I do is pretty much cover what they say. No, I mean, they have a tough job. I feel for them. Obviously, I'm picking apart every single word they say. I try to read into what they're saying, and sometimes there's not much to read into. So I do feel somewhat bad sometimes when I misread them, but I'm pretty good at reading what they have to say, I think. Of course, that's biased. That's me reading them. And that's pretty much what I do. So sometimes I feel like they're saying things just to mess around with me, like the whole Fred algorithm. And I knew he was messing around with me.
That was specifically made to confuse you, Barry.
I don't think it was made to confuse me. He made a joke. Yeah, let's call it Fred. I'm like, you know what? You're calling it Fred. I'm going to actually I'm going to call it that. And everybody's going to start calling this algorithm update that he did back a few months ago, the Google Fred update. And people did. I think he's regretting it somewhat. But it's better than calling it something else, I guess, like Mobile Get It or something. So, who knows? I mean, it's always fun to – they're nice guys. They try hard. They work hard. And it's not an easy job to help webmasters knowing that somebody like me is constantly following what they're saying and trying to pick it apart so that hopefully people don't misunderstand it and so forth.
Right. Okay. So we know, I think, together, because I sort of do something similar to you. I don't really do news-related stuff. It's more around tutorials. But one of my biggest problems is like keeping my content evergreen. Which is nearly impossible in the SEO world, but to me it sounds like even harder in terms of news because things are always going to be changing, and I'm sure you're still getting traffic from like articles from like years ago. How do you deal with that?
Right. So the evergreen stuff is hard for like news sites and blogs and so forth. You don't really think about how to keep up to date your individual articles. What I definitely recommend is that when you have category pages, so let's say you have a category landing page about the Google Panda algorithm or the Google Penguin algorithm or the Google Fred update, and then you have all these let's say you have 100 articles about Google Fred itself. You can have an intro on that category page just describing what Google Fred's about and so forth, and constantly update that category page with content around that. And then obviously have all the archives about all the different individual articles you've written over the course of the years about that algorithm. I think Search Engine Land does a really good job around that. I mean, if you do a search for Google Panda in Google, you'll see, one of the top results is the Search Engine Land article, Google Search Engine Land's category landing page. You can see we and Search Engine Land make a pretty significant effort to keep those pages up to date. We put, a nice image, content, introduction content on that, and so forth. So making sure your category pages are evergreen and have a lot of useful and recent articles to link to is important. But updating, it's not like a Wikipedia where you have a specific topic and all you do is update that. You have our news site, updating all those news articles, and you have hundreds of news articles every month. It's almost impossible to keep updating those articles. It's better to kind of make a category page and keep those category pages somewhat updated.
Okay, so here's one of the upsides I can see from the news sort of standpoint is if you're not doing tutorials, it's it's easier not to sort of, get crossed opinions like, oh, well, that's not how you should do that, because like, you're just talking about what's going on in the news. But at the same time, there's probably some downsides, like, I mean, kind of what we were talking about. Do you mind talking about like maybe some of the upsides and downsides of like running a big SEO news-based site?
The upsides and downsides. So the upsides is you get to help people. You get to help a lot of people in terms of trying to clarify myths, try to help them prioritize what they have to work on, help them get clarity about a algorithm that might have hurt their website drastically. Let's say, Google Friend rolled out and then they had no idea. They look at their analytics and they see their traffic drop from Google from, let's say, 10,000 visits today down to 1,000 visits per day. They've lost a significant chunk of their traffic and they don't know what to do. And they're like, what happened? So then they read an article that I wrote or somewhere it's referencing an article that I wrote and so forth. And they see that they're not alone, that there's hundreds, if not thousands of other, webmasters in the same bucket. And they have at least somewhere to go that they can actually go ahead and talk to people and get some more clarity from people in terms of what, they should do. It's like a support group. At the same time, sometimes I'm able to get Google to confirm those updates. Sometimes Google is able to say, this update targeted content, this targeted affiliate spam, whatever it might be, and that gives them some type of avenue to go ahead and help their website improve. Sometimes it's not, but at least they have the support group. So helping webmasters with those really devastating changes to their rankings and their revenues on their website is very, very helpful. That makes me a little bit happy. And of course, there's times where people are just nasty and they're not happy about it. So you write an article about Google doing an update. They think that you did the update and that you went ahead and made their business decline, and they had to fire people because you wrote an article about it when you're just a messenger. And of course, you have some people who are not happy with that and they take it a little bit too far. But overall, most people are very appreciative, and I just do it just because, one, it's fun to track, and two, it does help a lot of webmasters and SEOs.
Nice. So you were just talking about cracking myths. Is there any big myths that you cracked like in the last year or two around like maybe a lot of things that people think are a certain way in the SEO industry, but like really aren't?
That's a tough one. In the past year, it's funny because Gary from Google just did a tweet saying, is there any myths you want me to debunk? We tweeted this back in May. Just let me know, and he'll do a blog post debunking or myths or something like that. He hasn't done that blog post. But one thing that constantly comes up over and over and over again are these redirects. I've been reporting about them for years, since the beginning of SEO. But it keeps coming up. Google says, well, just to be fair, Matt Cutts said back in the day that 301 redirects do have some type of dilution. That was clarified. They don't dilute that much. That people would notice it. And then John Mueller from Google said, no, 301 and 302 redirects have no dilution. They pass 100% of their page rank, 100% of their signals from page A to page B when you go ahead and do a 301 redirect. This keeps it coming up and up and up again because people either do case studies or they do whatever, and they're saying, Google's lying to us. And there's always that, I don't think Google's lying to us. I really don't. I don't think Google lies to us. They might not tell you the whole truth, but if Google specifically says, no, there is no dilution of any link signals when you do a redirect, I don't think Google's lying to us when they're outright saying that. So one of those myths that come up over and over again is this whole 301 redirection dilution myth.
Interesting, because like every time I see somebody do a 301 redirect, it always seems like their site somehow gets ranked lower or something bad happens.
I mean, there is a time delay. Sometimes, like if you're redirecting your whole entire website to a new URL, Google has to recrawl new pages, has to pass all that stuff. But over time, you should not see any type of ranking decline for doing so. So again, it might take a few months for Google to reprocess the whole new domain name. But typically, if you're pointing page A to page B, just a one page to one page, that's usually very, very quick. You might see a decline in that page ranking for a week or so, depending on how fast that page is crawled and how fast Google's able to pass those signals. But usually that stuff is really, really quick, especially when you're doing an HTTPS switch.
Okay. All right. Well, I don't want to take too much of your time, Barry. I'm just going to ask you a couple more questions, and then I'll let you go. One of the questions I really wanted to ask you was, like, what do you think people should start asking, like, in terms of what to start expecting moving forward? Like, should we keep using PBNs, or should we, be creating tons of directory sites, or what kind of questions do you think people should be asking?
Well, they should definitely not be doing either of those. No, I mean, again, I think especially with voice search, they should really be thinking about how they can write content that answers their users' questions, because that's where their searchers are heading towards. They should also be looking in terms of how they could go ahead and, if they're selling product or some type of service online, how they can make those voice search landing, those pages that they're selling the products on, how they can make those voice search transaction enabled. So if it's subscribing to a newsletter or if it's buying something on Amazon, Google says they're really focused on helping people make a transaction. It could be like a transaction, could be like an e-commerce transaction. It could be, signing up for a newsletter. It could be any type of conversion over voice search. And you really need to think about how you can make your pages do that over voice search. And obviously with Amazon buying over Alexa, it's easy because it's Amazon.com. But Google's starting to play around with this type of stuff. You can order from your Google Home. You can order right now from Walmart. That's pretty cool. But you have to kind of look into these things and say, hey, how can I not just rank for these featured snippets by making, answering questions, but also when it comes down to a transaction, how I could get my users convert over voice search. And that's a very fuzzy area right now, but you really should be thinking about that in the future.
Right on. All right, so it's time for the top 3 for 3. So we got 3 questions with 3 answers. The first question is, what is your favorite tool to use in terms of the SEO industry? Could be anything. Could be something around creating content. Could be, I don't know, Screaming Frog for doing audits, whatever you want. The next question would be, what is your top book? That can be anything you've read, just anything. Doesn't have to be around SEO. And the last one would be the top random fact about you that you can tell people that most people probably wouldn't know.
Sure. So top tool. I would say Feedly. I'm a big RSS feed junkie. I'm subscribing to tons of different variations of blogs, news sites, anything that has an RSS feed that's related to what I want to cover. I am subscribed to that using RSS, using Feedly. I used to use Google Reader. In fact, I think they told me, I sent me a t-shirt. I was like their #1 feed consumer across anybody who used Google Reader back then.
Wow.
So I consume a lot of RSS feeds, and I pretty much live by those. So that's probably my #1 tool in terms of content creation and so forth, because that's where I get a lot of my ideas. Of course, scourging the forums and social media and so forth help with that as well. Books. So I don't read a lot of books, believe it or not. I spend a lot of my time writing, and I read a lot of articles online. I read a lot of magazines like Wired and so forth.
Well, we could make an exception. We could say maybe the top website for learning. How about that?
So it's not one web. Again, I subscribe to so many different feeds. I really live on these feeds, and it could come from anywhere because a great article could come from some random blog that I've never heard of, because I discover it through some type of blog feed discovery or something like that. But obviously, Search Engine Land is a really great resource. I'm a little biased there, but it's a really great resource in terms of learning stuff. I do love reading Twitter and so forth, following certain types of people and so forth. But in terms of just thinking about futures, I do like reading Wired magazine. One or two magazines I actually subscribe to, get in the mail and read over the weekends. So Wired is it's a fun magazine to
Is that an SEO-based magazine?
No, it's just a technology, future technology type of magazine.
Oh,
I definitely recommend it. Wired is pretty excellent. And the last question was
top random fact about you.
Fact. I have no hobbies.
Oh, come on! I saw you flying a drone around.
I don't do it much. I bought it, and like anything I buy that seems fun, it sits in the corner, and it collects dust. So I probably flew it maybe like 3, 4, 5 times. since I bought it like several months ago, and it just sits there and I never use it. My hobby is, being at work and writing and, doing work, which is weird. I travel a lot. I go places. I literally go from the airport to the hotel or venue that I'm speaking. I don't go outside to sightsee or anything. I just go from the speaking gig back to the airport and go home. So I'm not into all these. I don't know. I like to work, and that's what I get my enjoyment out of, helping people that way.
Travels a lot is a good one, though. I think that's directly connected because, you like to work, so you can go travel all over the place, right, and speak.
Yeah, but I went to Sweden, and I didn't even step outside to look at everything.
I completely relate to that. I did something similar to that as well.
Yeah.
It was in Costa Rica, but that was because I was a little scared to walk around.
Oh, no. But yeah, anyway, I have no interest in terms of that type of stuff, which is weird, but I don't know.
Yeah. Cool, man. Well, hey, I really appreciate your time, Barry, and it was awesome having you on here. I've been following you since the beginning of my SEO career, which was about 2 or 3 years ago, and it's really cool going from starting out trying to figure this stuff out and like actually being able to get on an interview with you and be like, this was one of the guys that I've been following for a really long time.
No, it's my pleasure. Thanks for doing it, and I apologize for my cough. I got a little bit sick yesterday. I'm glad I was able to make this happen. So thanks again.
Oh, no worries.